Hello everyone, Amy R here with Prairie Paper and Ink, and for today's video I am using Tonic's, one of their Adorables stamp set. They have several sets under the Adorables line and they're all cute critters with little punny sentiments and things like that. So this is the Sammy Takes It Easy stamp set. And I just have a rectangle of white cardstock here, and I've lined up the image I want to use and the sentiment I want to use, and I'm using my travel stamp platform. And I'm going to ink these up with Tonic's Black Shadow Hybrid ink, which is a alcohol marker friendly ink. And because these are brand new stamps, I'm going to stamp them a couple times to get a crisp image. And then once these are stamped, I am going to color these in with some of the Nuvo Creative Pens, aka Nuvo alcohol-based markers. And a lot of people asking if I will do like a comparison with these to Copics. Honestly, for me personally, it's almost like apples to oranges in a way, because they're just so different. But at the same time, I color with these the same way I would color with Copics. I will honestly say I liked these. I liked how these colors went down and how they blended. They blended really nicely. And biggest difference is somewhat the shape. The bullet tip, these don't have like a big brush tip, which I thought I would really struggle with, but it worked just fine coloring with these. And then price, these are so much cheaper. Like you can get a 3-pack for less than the cost of a Copic marker. So I started with the Pebble collection with the 3 colors, and I did my normal, like this is just how I color. That I think might be the one thing I'll struggle with is coloring with these differently, because they're not intended to blend in the same way as Copic markers. You can layer these to create different colors. It's not so much about the blend, they are different. But I worked darkest to lightest and really liked the blend I got. And then I added a bit of gray to like his little eye area on the Sloth. And for that I used the Stormy grays. Again, just went darkest to lightest. That's something else I really liked about these, is because they come in those sets of 3, all the guesswork's taken out of it for you. Like it's just done. It's like I just grabbed those 3, they work together, life is great. So I used those, and then I went in with the browns for the branch. And again, I work darkest to lightest. That's just something I've started doing over the last couple of years, however long it's been. If you want more control when you're coloring with alcohol-based markers, and more control over where the color is going down and how much depth you add, etc., work lightest to darkest. That is generally what is the easiest way to learn. I just go this way because for me it works, and because it's faster. That's all there is to it. So I wanted to add some green to this image. So I went around the outer edges of the stamped image. I'm using the Lucky Clover set this time. And again, starting with the darkest closest to the image, I'm using the medium, and then I go over everything with the lightest green. And then I pulled out the blender marker that comes in one of the packs as well. And I used that to really go over it and really kind of blend it out a bit, because I definitely didn't want any harsh lines with the green area. And yeah, the blender with the Nouveau alcohol markers is very similar to the Copic blender in the fact that I wouldn't... The word blender is somewhat misleading in the fact that I don't use the blender, and it's not necessarily intended to blend 2 different colors together. What it really does is kind of push the color deeper into the cardstock, and you'll get kind of just a smoother look. So in that sense, you do get somewhat of a blend, but always think of it as pushing color away from it. So I like to use a blender marker with alcohol markers to, blend things out, to smooth it out to more of, a white edge, or to add texture and whatnot. So after I did that coloring, I stamped one of the leaves from the set just onto some scraps of white cardstock with that same Black Shadow Hybrid ink. And then I'm just using those exact same greens to color in these leaves, doing the exact same thing. Starting with my darkest, adding the middle color, and then going in with the lightest to just blend everything together. And then there are coordinating dies for this set, and I'll link to them with the supplies. I didn't have them, so I just fussy cut out all of these leaves. But after all of that coloring, this is when I went back in and I started adding just some more dotting texture to the sloth and to the background. It's one way to really add that extra little element to coloring, and it's just literally just dotting the marker. Really simple. That's one thing that's really nice about having the bullet tip on these markers. It makes for very simple, easy dotting. So I used one of the grays on the sloth, and then on the green background, I just used the blender for this. So it gives it more of a subtle look, especially like it dries and evens out a little bit more, but it still gives it that little bit of like texture and depth and dimension, which is really fun. So I did all of that. And then I pulled out this oak wood grain paper from Tonic that is heavily textured. And I ran it through my die cut machine, and I was curious what would happen. Like, would I flatten out all that texture? And no, it keeps all its texture amazingly, even when die cutting. So that was pretty fun. So I'm going to use that, and I'm also going to use some green leaves specialty paper. And the green leaves one it has a texture to it. It's much more subtle. It literally looks like leaves have been pressed into it, but it's not that heavy texture like some of the other ones, but it's rather fitting for this image, of course. So I trim that down with my paper trimmer to just be slightly smaller than my A2 card. And then I'm just using some craft tacky glue to adhere the wood grain paper. If you're not familiar with Tonic's specialty papers, they're actually a cotton blend. So it literally does feel like fabric, and it's very flexible and very soft, but that's how you get that insane amount of texture to it. It's interesting. So I tend to hoard it because I like to look at it. And this one especially is, it's got that little like shimmer to it as well. So you only see a little bit of the edge, but it's more than enough. You can see that wood grain to it. I wanted to just kind of frame that main image. So pop that on with the craft tacky glue, added the leaves, and then I'm going to pop on the main image with a little bit of foam tape just to pop it up a little bit on top of all that texture and the leaves and whatnot. So once I've got that in place, I am going to stamp my inside of my card, which is just heavyweight white cardstock and standard A2 sized. And I pulled out a couple more stamps from the set, and I'm using a couple of the diamond ink pads from the Woodland Walk hybrid pack. So I'm using the soft suede and then pistachio green. So I stamped the little sloth kind of in the corner with the soft suede, and then I'm using the pistachio green for the leaves and just kind of like stamping it multiple times just to create little like clusters to add, a little extra something to the inside of my card. And then I'm going to add a sentiment using the Black Shadow hybrid ink. And again, because it's a brand new stamp, I want to stamp it off a couple times just to get some good ink coverage here. And I'm going to stamp this onto the inside of my card. And then I'm going to adhere the card front to the card base. And I cut down the green leaves paper to be just slightly smaller, so I've got a little bit of a white border just to kind of tie everything in together. So then once I've got that adhered, I'm just going to add one last embellishment, trying not to completely overdo it. Also because I don't really want to cover up these specialty papers any more than I already have because they're just gorgeous. But I pulled out the Dirty Bronze crystal drops and the Cocoa Blush jewel drops that are also from the Woodland Walk collection. So, it all coordinates and works well together. And just added a few of those to this card front. And after I had added them, I'm just going to tap my card. I'm just tapping them literally on an ink pad just to help round them out a little bit more, smooth them out a little bit more so they look more like enamel dots. And then I'm going to let this completely dry overnight. And then I also made an envelope from that wood grain paper just to kind of tie it all together. So that was my card. As always, there'll be a link below the video to the blog post with a supply list and links to everything, so you can check it out below if you're interested. Thank you all so much for watching and subscribing and thumbs upping and commenting. I really appreciate it. And I will see you all very soon in the next video. Bye.